everybody, welcome back to a new episode of EDHTakes. Today, we'll be talking about The Hunt in relation to Innistrad Midnight Hunt being released last Friday. I'm your first host, Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm your second host, Spencer Cook.
And so what does the hunt mean? What is that related to, Spencer?
Well, the hunt, outside of just being the set, Midnight Hunt, is the idea of, in a game of a commander, or maybe even in deck building, having sort of you're hunting down certain players, strategies, cards, things that make you pretty much go on the offensive, at least when it comes to like your mentality. So maybe the hunt might be playing certain cards to hate out graveyards because you want to hunt graveyard decks, kind of, or something along those lines. Or maybe even just like attacking a player that you think is doing more powerful things in a game. You're kind of hunting that player a little bit. That's kind of the thesis for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, this is a concept that has always resonated really strongly with me because I've always been a big fan of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or like Supernatural, like the idea of like humans like hunting monsters or something like that. It just feels really cool, and I'm sure everyone who's played enough Commander has encountered a kind of deck or like a card or a strategy or even a kind of person or a player that they've thought, man, I really want to be able to like, I might take some L's to other kinds of strategies. There might be things I'm okay losing to, but not this kind of card, not this kind of deck.
I want to try my best to hunt this monster.
Yeah.
I
will bring low the monster.
Yeah, so today in this episode we're going to be talking about that topic and then finishing off the episode by doing sort of a mini set review of Midnight Hunt cards. We don't really like set reviews per se, but
we just got a couple cards we dig.
Yeah, we're going to talk about maybe a card in each color and just kind of give a little bit of discussion about that. But yeah, Eli, let's say we get into it. You want to talk about the idea of certain color combinations that you find yourself wanting to hunt?
Yeah, we broke this down into a couple different categories, and it's these are just like our personal opinions of the things that we like to hunt down. There might be things that we could say other people feel strongly about, like you're saying, like graveyard decks or control decks, stacks decks.
Yeah.
But personally, I have this thing, and I've mentioned it before on the podcast. You know, we play a lot of Boros, and personally, I like to squash the bugs.
Yeah.
By bugs meaning blue or black, blue, green decks.
Yeah.
Because as anyone who's played a lot of Commander or listened to a lot of Commander content knows, bug decks have a reputation for just being overwhelmingly strong.
Yeah, that in the sense of more specifically, I'd say people really give big ups to Sultai decks, and bug decks are Sultai plus black, so it adds a lot of powerful effects to that as well. Stuff like
Simic plus black.
Sorry, that's right. Not Sultai is bug. Yeah. Simic plus black, and they add
Simic definitely too. Yeah,
yeah, things like reanimation, mass board wipes, things that maybe are a little bit weak, and besides obviously Cyclonic Rift and bounce effects, but very 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 efficient cards like Reanimate and like Animate Dead, Toxic Deluge, a bunch of really powerful cards that a lot of bug decks will play.
Yeah, and big fans of the bug color combination, or Magic players in general that like these colors might say, like, oh, it does all these sneaky, like, tricky things. And really, though, I think how I see it in Commander is a bug deck is playing with a lot of brute strength.
Yeah.
It's just like its value, it's playing to the exact strengths of Commander. So it's just very straightforward, just like,
yeah,
brutally strong.
So when I play, I kind of like to play bug decks. Sometimes I just built one, and the way that I think is the most and this is how I built my deck. The most generic way that a bug deck plays in its essence is you play early ramp spells from green. You play good interaction in sense of like blue counter spells. Blue has some of the best 1-mana removal spells. Black has some good removal spells and board wipes. You play efficient cards like counter spells. You play good card advantage engines that you have access to, and then you finish the game off with something like big mana Villainous Wealth. That's like a key, like that's like that like epitomizes bug decks. Villainous Wealth, I think, or like something like a big effect like Expropriate or Torrent of Hailfire or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you don't play more bug decks, Spencer, because there's really nothing, personally, there's nothing scary in a game of Commander than somebody who is really good at Magic playing a really good bug deck, because usually the thing and this is going to sound maybe kind of mean, but I've played against a lot of people playing Sultai decks at different game shops that are just kind of good stuff decks, and like they don't have to like play super tight or do anything super tricky. You just like you overwhelm your opponents with value and card advantage.
Yeah. Effects like some of the iconic commanders for this, stuff like Muldrotha the Gravetide or Yarok the Desecrated, are just kind of one commander big value engines that will kind of just outlast most other colors.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of effort to ramp into like an early Consecrated Sphinx and then use that mana and card advantage to get yourself like a turn 7 huge Torment of Hailfire or something like that.
Or doing something like end step entombing and then reanimating a Razaketh and tutoring for a Cyclonic Rift to have an answer to whatever you need. Or free counter spells with that as well. So bug decks are pretty strong, I would say, and I think there's a lot to say about having this kind of squashing the bugs mentality. I think it's kind of funny, at least.
You really gotta, if you don't know the person playing, you have to assume that, well, if they're playing Sultai, they're probably playing some pretty strong cards. Mm-hmm. So just maybe assess that a little higher. I mean, that's how I feel. It's my personal vendetta, but I think it's valid. I think there's a lot of good reasons for thinking that.
And there's something to be said about, like, every color combination having really strong cards. Like, of course, if you see, like, a red deck and you think they're, like, a good player and, like, play powerful cards, you can expect to see a Jeska's Will, and that can be very powerful. Or something like a Mana Geyser, right? Yeah. All the colors have access to these really powerful cards, it's just that Bug seems to epitomize it a little bit more, I'd say.
Yeah, I think to me it epitomizes the good stuff deck.
Yeah. Well, it's similarly to Bug, Eli. I know you're also, I mean, not you and myself and most other content creators or people in general, I think, have like kind of, Simic decks, right? Because there's always that meme of, like, Simic commanders are just so much better than every other color combination because they all just draw cards and make mana and stuff, right?
Right, and my hatred for, or my disdain for Simic isn't as strong as it is for Bug, because an untuned or a clumsy Simic deck can really struggle with win conditions, and sometimes they might do the thing where they make a ton of mana, draw a ton of cards, and then they just can't win.
They spin their wheels turn after turn.
And they can be stopped because they won't be able to, like, close out the game quickly enough, because they might... Like, a casual Simic deck, even if it has very strong card advantage engines, might just come down to attacking with creatures. Yeah. And that's pretty easily countered.
One thing about Simic decks, I think, at least with the commanders that I think people play, oftentimes you see a lot of Tatyova, I think. Tatyova being one of the best forms of card advantage you can have in the command zone. Additionally, you have the other kind of Simic commander, which is like I don't remember what their names are, but the new precons that they made, and they have the commanders that either give you a bunch of tokens when you make an extra token when you make your first token of a turn, or make you so you can make a token of another creature.
Oh yeah, out of the Strixhaven precon.
Yep. Those cards, even in the hands of just like a very underwhelming like deck, you can always do powerful things like make a 5 Avenger of Zendikars or something with a rare replication or whatever.
Yep, very strong stuff, but it feels a little easier to have some counterplay to that, whereas like the Sultai has win conditions that are pretty much dealt with on the stack.
Yeah, like you were saying, Eli, those big black X spells really are what Sultai decks with a lot of mana tend to win with, whereas Simic decks with a lot of mana seem to have to either make infinite mana and then make you draw your deck, or do some sort of very large combat swing or something, or like some big what's the serpent guy? Coma, some stuff where they just lock down and then that card, whatever. But I digress about that. Go ahead, let's talk about some stuff.
But yeah, in that case, the Simic decks, if somebody's playing a Simic deck at like a lower to like middle power level, it's much easier to deal with, I feel like, than a middle to power level.
Yeah, and you can often prepare for the Exsanguinate or the Grey Merchant reanimate and then like blink effect. I mean, I guess you can blink it in blue, but I'm just thinking like that's usually how you're winning in Sultai decks, in my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on from that, I find it kind of funny because we talk about Sultai first, and then we talk about Sultai minus black, Simic, and now we're going to talk about Simic minus green, mono blue.
So this is interesting, though, because whereas we said maybe Simic is a little bit weaker than Sultai because it's lacking black, I don't feel the same way about mono blue. Strangely enough, is that weird?
So obviously, a deck, or a color combination of more colors is going to be stronger than less colors, right? But I think if you look at the way people tend to build their decks, a lot of mono blue decks tend to be a little bit more oppressive in what they are doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and some of the commanders too, and it forces you to delve into more blue abilities, which we did a whole episode about this.
About
this is going to come
abilities.
up a couple times. The effects that are contained within a mono blue deck sometimes are extremely powerful.
Yeah, so maybe you would say that in a Simic deck, you start to play a bunch of green cards, and that might even be less powerful because you end up playing cards like Avengers Zendikar or something, which obviously is a great card, but in mono blue you might play something like an extra turn spell or like a mass bounce spell or something.
Yeah, I think you trade in a lot of your proactive cards for reactive cards when you switch from Simic to mono blue, if that makes any sense.
And that's not to say that it's inherently more powerful, like proactivity versus reactivity, like you can make arguments for which one's better, but in the context of hunting down decks, the deck that has near infinite interaction and like really tricky ways to play with stack and stuff, it kind of feels like you really do want to be pressuring them, hunting down them a little bit so they can't assemble multiple pieces of stopping your opponents from killing them forever.
Yeah, and I also wonder if there's a progression, like switching from like a casual Simic deck to a more casual mono blue deck. You switch out your land ramp for mana rocks, and you might think, well, land ramp is better than mana rocks, but you switch to the mana rocks and you're playing more things like, every deck's going to have a soul ring, but you might think, oh, well, I need ramp at this cost, so I better play like some Mox or I got to get a mana crypt or something,
or Soul Ring Tutors even. Like, I think you don't play.
Oh yeah,
you probably don't play. I mean, you can play like Trinket Mage in a Simic deck, but I think most players wouldn't. Whereas in a mono blue deck, I think a lot more players would be willing to Trinket Mage.
Yeah, Trinket Mage is amazing in a mono blue deck.
Yeah, it's also good in a Simic deck, but
and you can steal mana rocks, you can copy mana rocks.
Yeah,
I've got a whole deck based around that, and it's I'd consider it's built pretty casually, but just the things it's doing in a mono blue deck. It's really strong, like if it goes without getting stopped.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Mono Blue, I feel like, has a lot of access to board resets and mana, which I think are a pretty good thing to do. Whereas you have access to them in Simic and decks, but I feel like you play less of them because you're trying to play more of a Simic game plan, I suppose.
Yeah, you're doing your own thing. You're building your own thing up, whereas you're not focusing so much. You're playing more solitaire, usually, I feel like.
Sure. In a yeah.
Yeah, with Simic.
Well, and then, again, talking about the bug color combinations, we're not gonna talk about Dimir, because I feel like Dimir actually isn't that
Dimir
bad.
feels pretty chill, for the most part.
To me, at least. But sometimes we gotta hunt mono black decks, I think.
Well, we had this progression of going from 3 colors, 2 colors, 1 color, and we said, it doesn't make sense that you would get stronger for removing colors, but blue, maybe just the way you build that, it might feel a little bit stronger. But black actually is an interesting color in that it has rewards built into it for staying within mono black.
I mean, every color has some level of those rewards, but I feel like black has the most of any of the color combinations.
Definitely.
Because you get effects like, when you go mono black, you tend to kind of aim yourself more towards those doubling your black mana effects, stuff like Cabal Coffer's effects, and Nirkana Revenant. I don't know if that card's super great these days, but it will make you a bunch of mana. And then when you do that, or even just go hard on a reanimation theme, those are really powerful things to do in Commander.
Well, yeah, like you're saying, Nirkana Revenant, not probably great at 6 mana, but when you're reanimating it, it's pretty good. And that's the thing about mono black is, sure, you can build a unique mono black strategy, but in my experience with mono black, you pretty much do the reanimation thing in every mono black deck.
You might as well. It's just that powerful. Even if you're not doing the reanimation thing, adding literally 3 cards to your deck being like Animate Dead, Reanimate, and Entomb, like that's just going to be great. Even if you don't have big things in your deck, your opponent's deck, your opponent will have them, or you'll get like a medium thing and be great just fine.
Yeah, Spencer, you'd consider Reanimate to be one of the strongest cards in Commander, right?
Certainly.
And Animate Dead is it's pretty close. Like it's good enough. I mean, it's a lot cheaper too.
You don't lose the life from that too. So, but yeah, I mean, like also a thing with talking about mana in mono black decks. It seems sometimes that when you limit the decks to less colors, decks seem to play more. They look more towards more of the powerful ways to ramp. So, for example, in a Sultai deck, I think a lot of people will be happy enough playing cards like Farseeks and Kodama's Reaches and Cultivates, whereas in a mono black deck, what you're actually doing is you're trying to put the expedition maps in your deck so you can tutor out Cabal Coffers and Urborg, which is because you don't have too many other. I mean, you have Mana Rocks, of course, but like you find yourself actually powering up your ramp. Putting Mana Crypt in your mono black deck because it's a mono black deck. You don't have Cultivate, right? Mm-hmm. Which is powering it up because you don't have access to the more. I hesitate to say more fair ramp of green ramp, but I think green ramp is certainly more fair than fast mana for Mana Rocks and Cabal Coffers effects.
Yeah, and some people might say a tutor is just a modal spell that is any card in your deck plus that CMC. So if you have a Mana Crypt in your deck, well, Demonic Tutor is just 2 mana.
Get Mana Crypt.
Get Mana Crypt into play, right?
Which is like a kind of a better Farseek, right?
Yeah.
Honestly. But yeah, also mono black decks, one thing that they do is they tend to utilize life as a resource. So that's a reason why I think hunting mono black decks can be important. And that kind of transition us into the idea of strategies, kind of, right, Eli?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what are some of the strategies that we find being the kind of strategy that we might want to hunt down in a game of Commander?
Well, for me personally, I think I like to try to stop people from like doing crazy, like kind of infinite-ish value plays, like things where they're just gonna snowball multiple Risen Reefs in play kind of thing, put 1 million lands into play and have a lot of cards in your hand effects. That's kind of the decks that I want to hunt because I feel like, depending on what deck I'm playing, of course, I might not be able to really beat that in the late game.
Yeah, definitely. If you see that kind of thing happening, like we played a game recently, I was playing my Arcades deck, which it's got Simic in it. I know, like, that feels wrong, but it's walls. I like the walls. I like the kind of strategy game like feeling of that, like tower defense stuff. Mm-hmm. But that does a lot of kind of Simic type things with like some walls are kind of mana dorks, and you're drawing cards when you play your creatures.
Yeah, even what's the Chulane? The effects where you can kind of go off in a turn and then just keep putting lands into play. That's something that I tend to be very, very aggressively fighting against. I think whenever people have ways to continuously put lands into play, that's why I mentioned Risen Reef, and I think Chulane, you've used that in your Arcades deck to kind of be like, okay, play a wall for 1 mana or 2 mana, draw a land, put into play another wall, draw 2 cards.
Yeah, the ability to make your plays close to resource neutral, that's really hard to stop once that gets going.
Well, yeah, because then you also set up yourself for, an even better next turn because you've all of a sudden ramping. You've played like a rampant growth 4, 5, 6 times while drawing cards and putting a board into play. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty ridiculous. And it's still there for next turn, threatening to do the same thing. So yeah, I think that's a pretty common strategy. A lot of decks do this that I tend to try to hunt down if I know someone's playing that or if I think they're going to do that sort of thing. And when I say hunt down, I kind of mean put cards in my deck to stop that kind of thing, or maybe just assess them a little bit higher, threat assess them a little bit higher than my other opponents.
Yeah, that's the main idea we're going for here. Is it's a lot of it's about threat assessment, but yeah, we do some things, and maybe we can go into that like after we go through all this stuff, like talk about some of the things that
we can do in deck building or threat assessment. Okay, what about you, Eli? Do you have any other strategies that you tend to fight against?
Well, I don't have a problem playing against combo decks, but you really do have to be on edge about it and really keep them in check and kind of force a combo deck to use a lot of their interaction or their protection earlier in the game so that they're not able to do that on the turn that they combo off.
You don't want to let them play on a whim.
Yeah, exactly. If you're playing against a combo deck, I mean, like I said, I don't hate it, but it gives that player the ability to go from somebody you didn't assess as like the winner of the game to the winner just by assembling like the right 2 cards. It's like it changes the
calculus.
Yeah, like Commander's mostly a resource accumulation game, and so playing a combo deck though, it kind of just changes it into assembling like the right 2 cards rather than like it's quality over quantity.
Yeah, and you know it's difficult to play a game where you can't always hold up interaction all the time. So if someone's playing a combo deck, making sure to get them to play on the back foot, having to play more defensive, making them having to play more defensive, I'm saying, can make it so you yourself are able to play more freely later in the game.
Yeah, and you might have to keep track of different types of things and different resources in the game, like how many cards do they have in their hand? How much mana do they have? Because a combo player might just be able to win off of no board state. That's
another thing, Eli, is that combo decks are, I would say, tricky to play against. They're difficult to play against, like, quote-unquote, optimally, because there comes, like, you can, if I'm playing against a combo deck and I just, like, destroy them, there comes a time where the more resources I put into stopping them isn't actually doing anything anymore. Like, I'm just kind of beating a dead horse and wasting resources on them. So it's actually kind of hard to play against combo decks because you need to know how far you need to go to stop them from winning. So that's another reason that it's probably reasonable to hunt combo decks, because there's just more room for you to make a mistake when you're playing against combo decks.
Definitely.
All right, nice.
Well, do we want to talk about some specific types of cards or specific cards that we might assess a little higher?
Yeah, so like things that you might see in a game, or someone's playing and you immediately are just like, okay, I might need to start hunting this player. So I already mentioned it earlier, but fast mana, I think, is a very big indicator of power level, or just
red flag.
It needed to be stopped, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm. If you see somebody play turn 1 Mana Crypt, I mean, I've got decks that aren't like, they're not combo decks, but if you're playing Mana Crypt, like, you're playing because that deck is strong and you want it to be stronger.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say you're using a Mana Crypt and like very good, like, oh, this deck is, if we're gonna do things out of 10, like, this deck's a 5. I'm playing Mana Crypt.
This is tribal worms, and I'm playing Mana Crypt so I can cast my worms. I don't buy it, honestly. I'm not gonna buy it.
Yeah, you can't just take somebody's word for that, especially when you see like multiple pieces of fast mana. Like, maybe somebody could be playing, like, everyone plays Soul Ring in their deck. Yeah. That's fine. But, yeah, so if somebody's playing, like, a turn 1 Mana Crypt into a 3-drop.
Yeah, or like a Chrome Mox or something, or they play, like, or effects like in green you have, like, Burgeoning and Exploration. Those also make me think that you're playing something a little bit more degenerate.
Mm-hmm.
Besides fast mana, what other mana sources, Eli?
Well, I put something that a lot of people probably don't think of when they think of really abusive fast mana starts, but to me, mana dorks that tap for more mana than they cost to cast seem really degenerate.
So you're thinking effects like Bloom Tender, right?
Yeah, like a Bloom Tender, or what's the...
Faeburrow Elder?
Faeburrow Elder. There's the new one for enchantments that taps for X, where X is the number of enchantments you have. The Axebane Guardian, the wall.
The wall one. Stuff like Selvala, right?
Yeah, Selvala, especially if you can give them haste.
Morrowind, everything, yeah.
If you have, like, say, a Lightning Greaves in play, and then you play one of these dorks, they not only pay for themselves, but they give you extra mana that turn, so it leads to really explosive plays.
Yeah, Eli, when you were playing your Arcades deck the other day we were playing, and you had, I was talking about Chulane earlier, you had a turn where you were able to play Axebane Guardian with a Lightning Greaves in play, and then tap it for a bunch of mana, and then have a Chulane, and then give Chulane haste, and Chulane lets you bounce another creature you control to your hand, so it lets you play your Axebane Guardian again, and make like 8 mana off that because of all the walls in play.
Yeah,
so,
and I think I played a clone too.
To clone the Axebane Guardian again, and then give it haste to make 8 more mana or so, or whatever, at 9 mana. So that's why I think mana-positive mana dorks can kind of, besides just being good on their own, they also go off very easily with effects like haste.
Yeah, my newest Boros deck is Bruce Tarl and Elena Kessig Trapper, and she's a 5-mana creature that taps for red mana for the greatest power of creatures that enter the battlefield that turn. So what you can do if you have a way to give her haste is play her for 5 and immediately tap her for 4. But I have this creature in this deck, I forget its name, but it's the 4-mana creature, gives your commanders +2/+2 in haste.
Yeah.
So if you have that and play turn 4, and that's like all you've done. Then the next turn you play Elena, and she immediately taps for 6 mana.
Yeah. Or you can also play, big effects like that dragon that has Phyrexian fire breathing, and then make him have like 15 power, and then tap Elena for 15 or something.
Yeah, she's so good. It feels crazy to do that sort of thing in a Boros deck, like having that mana positive dork, but she adds so much mana.
So yeah, any deck, not just green decks, you can find ways to do this in other colors. Like you said, in a Boros deck, it's possible. Mm-hmm. So those kind of things are hunt-worthy, I'd say. Another thing that I was kind of talking about earlier, talking about how black decks will use life as a resource a lot. Decks that play cards like Bolas's Citadel, that really are just able to go off at the drop of a hat, assuming they get lucky or have the right kind of board set that lets them scry or whatever. Just because having enough life to be able to do it, those are effects that you might want to assess them to have do more damage to them. Something similar in CEDH, I know people will attack players because they have ad nauseam in their deck.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's it's fair, right? It makes sense.
There was an old episode of the Command Zone where instead of like a fan question mailbag, it was a sort of fan advice thing where they took comments from their fans, and somebody had this kind of insightful comment. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but some people might not think of it.
Yeah.
Where they said, all things equal, attack the black deck if you have like a random attack that you need to make on turn 2.
If it's everything else equal, no other conditions.
Because black decks will use their life as a resource. So we had a similar question at one point. We were talking in one of our groups, and somebody said something about if somebody has Bolas's Citadel in their deck,
are they just all things equal, the person to attack? Or even maybe not even all things equal. Maybe they're a little bit like less of a powerful board state or threat, but they have Bolas's Citadel in their deck, so should we just attack them for an extra 5-10 damage?
Yeah, say somebody goes from no board state to playing Bolas's Citadel and just gets like the perfect like top decks off of that.
Well, it's not even perfect top decks, it's just like not lands, right? Like that's
right,
all
yeah, they don't hit multiple lands right away. So somebody could potentially, if they haven't been touched, play, up to 39 mana worth of spells.
Yeah. This is one thing that I'll always give people a little bit of shit for. And I don't mean I'm like trying to shame them. I just mean like I like something I like to do to really kind of indicate whether something was powerful or not is I'll be like I'll say something like, he just put 20 mana of permanence into play this turn because of some big effect or whatever. And that's a good way to indicate whether something was super powerful or not. If someone ends up spending or putting enough permanence or casting essentially whatever X amount of mana of spells in a turn, it's probably a really powerful thing. So that leads us into the next card we're going to talk about, which is Selvalla's Stampede, which is a card that I think, I never played it myself, but yeah, you play that in a deck, right?
Yeah, and I was trying, when I put Bolas's Citadel, I was trying to think of other cards that kind of give you this ability to go from nothing to like an instant, overwhelming sometimes board state. Mm-hmm. Like you can go from nothing to winning just by playing one of these cards. And yeah, Selvalla's Stampede, potentially it gets you 4 really big permanents into play for 6 mana. So like you were saying, it could be 20 plus mana worth of stuff.
Yeah, or I mean, not trying to immediately jump to another card, but something like Tooth and Nail, Entwined Tooth and Nail, is that similar thing?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Where even if you're not comboing off, like it still can put into play 20 mana worth of spells. Mm-hmm. Or that Minotaur card that we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah, Deathbellow Warcry.
Puts 25 mana of spells into play. It's a very powerful card. So,
yeah, definitely.
Effects like that, I think, are hunt-worthy.
I think one of my best Selvalla's Stampedes was, I got a split vote. I got like 2 from my hand, 2 from the deck. And from the deck, I got 8 mana Kamal from Commander Legends and like Morag, Fury of Akum.
Yeah.
And from my hand, I got like a Zendikar Resurgent and some other huge creature, like Borborygmos.
Or like Gitrog Monster or something.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's quite good. And I know recently the last Command Zone they had, there was a very big, very early, not to spoil the episode, but there was a very early Selvalla's Stampede turn where Josh was like, okay guys, Josh didn't do it. Jimmy played the card, and Josh was like, okay, guys, he's got we don't know what he's got. It's probably just the right decision to let him put cards in from his hand, and then it just kind of backfired, and Jimmy put into play Consecrated Sphinx and 3 other heaters.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, because when you choose from hand, sure, it could be any kind of permanent, but yeah, at least they're losing cards from their hands, so they're kind of down, or they're cheating mana, but they're not gaining a card advantage necessarily.
And to talk about that, I mean, and it kind of is our point is that you hunt that player, and that's what happened in that game. Jimmy did that. Pulled ahead on the board super, super far and drew 40 cards, and then he died before he untapped.
Yeah.
So
you got to hunt that player, but you're probably going to need help.
Yeah, from everyone. Everyone needed to team up to do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, also extra turn effects kind of fit this mold of if someone's playing extra turns, that's a very powerful thing. Go see our Mono Blue episode if you want to hear more about that.
Yeah, this is coming back to Blue Needs to be Stopped, but on that episode I mentioned a game where somebody just had an Arcanus the Omnipotent in play. It was their commander. They had that and a Mana Rock.
And 5-6 mana or whatever.
Yeah, next turn, they play an extra turn spell. They untap, play a couple more Mana Rocks, play a Nykthos.
Yep.
Play another extra turn spell, also drawing another 3 cards.
Yeah.
They do that again, they play Expropriate.
Yep.
Game over.
Literally,
from, turn 6.
Literally game over off the back of just having their commander in play and an extra turn spell.
Yeah, so extra turn effects. If you know somebody has an extra turn spell in their deck, you kind of have to think, on this board state, what would happen if they not only had this, but they had another turn worth of deploying their resources on top of that to come at me with.
Yeah, I think our friend Finn plays a Brago deck, and he plays some extra turn spells in that deck, and especially with Brago needing to hit people and getting that insane value when you blink all your stuff that draws you cards. Pair that with an extra turn spell, and you get to just go fully off crazy.
Yeah, I don't play very many extra turn spells, but I picked up a bunch of Karn's Temporal Sunderings back in the day when they were 50 cents or whatever. They're probably still pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But even that, it's not it exiles itself, it's 6 mana, you have to have a legendary creature in play. It seems like a lot of downsides to that, but no, it's still really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. And then last thing I think we talked about for the specific types of cards is effects like free spells, most notably free counter spells, but also the red free change the target spell is also really, really good.
Yeah, Deflecting Swat's really good. That kind of free interaction that allows players to deploy their board out and do whatever they want, but then also when they get down to that turn, especially combo decks take advantage of this, where if you get to the turn where the combo player is going to combo off and they have one or multiple pieces of free interaction, they oftentimes just can't be stopped.
It's like for example, a Nezahal deck or something, like Mono Blue Nezahal, where it says whenever a player or whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you draw a card, and you can discard 3 cards to kind of blink it out till the end of the turn. That deck has infinite protection for its commander pretty much by being able to blink it out. Kind of infinite cards because people are, they have to play, a lot of times your way to deal with it is non-creature spells, and then they also get to just put free counter spells in the back of that, which aren't even the downsides of free counter spells are usually you have to discard a card. But
yeah,
when you
it's a loss of card advantage usually.
But when you draw a card anyway, because someone played an instant or sorcery to kill your commander, and then you counter it, or similar to you got the new 6 mana, not new, but 6 mana Niv Mizzet, blue, green, red, that whenever any player plays an instant or sorcery, draw a card, your free counter spells become not card disadvantage because you get the extra card off of casting it.
Yeah, it's
well, there's still card disadvantage because you're going 1 for 1, but still, you understand what I'm saying.
This is maybe a hot take, but it's something we mentioned on the Blue Needs to be Stopped episode. I just think counter spells, along with extra turns, are some of the strongest effects in Commander.
True.
And so free counter spells, really, really good.
I think the most the counter spell that I try to stay away from them in all but my most powerful decks. But the counterspell that I find myself running over and over again, even if it's just one counterspell in the deck, I really like playing Arcane Denial. Because Arcane Denial, at least when you're countering something, it feels better. It just feels a lot better, a lot less unfair.
You're card neutral with the 2 players that weren't involved in that transaction.
Yep.
Because you're not really down a card. I mean, you're giving an extra card to your opponent who spell you countered.
At least if someone gets their spell Arcane Denial, at least they don't feel as bad as they possibly could because they get to, they do get the 2 cards back out of it. So it's like they play like an expensive divination.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's about all we have for the card types. Do you want to introduce our last topic here about the hunting types of things?
What about types of players? Are there certain just people that really put your hackles on edge? Like, really just put you in full tilt?
Well, we have, I think one thing that we've done much more than a lot of other content creators that I have seen is I think we've talked a lot about, players outside of the game. Or like we talked about like types of people, ways you experience Commander with, the ways people act. And that's something that, I think we want to delve into again. So yeah, something like people that are just like rude and like mean, people that are just like assholes, like I'm not.
Yeah, if I'm playing at the shop and I'm playing with 3 random people, but 2 of them are perfectly pleasant, maybe they could be friends of mine. And one of those people is just like a total asshole, like the third person is just terrible. I want them out of the game as soon as possible.
Because you want to play more Magic with people you like.
Yeah, I'd rather be playing the game with people I'm having a good time with.
Yeah.
So I think it's
maybe a little bit petty.
Doesn't feel great, like it's kind of taking it from outside the game, but yeah, if especially if they're making other people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I want to give them the out to get out of there. And sometimes, if you're playing with somebody who is kind of an asshole, if you like knock them out of the game, they're the kind of person that usually gets pretty salty and they'll just like up and leave.
Not saying that you should necessarily just like fucking all balls to the walls against the asshole guy, but maybe shift your threat assessment a little bit. Be like, all else equal, this guy, I don't like playing with him.
I played a game once with somebody who was being kind of cocky and just like a little bit obnoxious, and it was way back in the day when I had my Aurelia deck before I turned it to my Gerard deck. I played an Atali, which is a based card, and I wanted to have a lot of fun with Atali, but he was playing like Titania or some mono green deck, and he beast within it and was like, I don't think so. And I was like, okay. And then the next turn I played like Aurelia and cheated in a Helm of the Host and equipped it and comboed off. Like the next turn or like a couple turns later, and he got really mad and he left the store.
Feels bad, man.
But
you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Do what you gotta do.
What else, Eli? What kind of players do you like to hunt?
Well, I had a story on the last episode where we were talking about Salt, about there used to be this guy that would show up with really, really strong decks, and they were a lot stronger than like anything else at the shop, and they were like near CEDH, but he wasn't playing. We didn't play CEDH, and it was before I started playing there. The meta had kind of shifted, where people pretty much realized they had to play a lot of spot removal and a lot of interaction and kind of 3v1 this person. But if that sort of person is playing in a pod with like 2 new people and myself, I'm very much an advocate for playing for yourself within the game and playing for the idea of winning. But if I'm playing with that kind of person and like 2 new players, I'm going to do what I can to make sure that person loses.
Sure.
Does that feel right? Does that feel like too petty?
I think there's some reasonableness to that. I mean, the idea of kind of stomping the pub stomper kind of thing.
Yeah, the pub stomper.
Yeah. Well, additionally, I think it's probably good to hunt players that are just better than you. So like they're better at the game than everyone else. Like you don't want to like make them feel bad and then like ruin the game for them. But if there's someone at the table who is just like a better opponent, like you kind of have to evaluate that and realize that they're actually going to be more of a threat.
Yeah, you have to think, can I beat this person if it comes down to 1v1, me versus them at the end? And like most things are equal. Like we both have like equal board states, equal amount of cards in hand. Will I be able to beat this person, or will I be the first person to make a mistake? You should probably try and do what you can to make them slip up earlier and take your advantages where you can get them.
Or I guess make them have less points where they can express how good of a player they are. Right? If they don't have, if they're kind of playing on the back foot, they might not be able to make that like really heads up play that you're kind of expecting from them because they're so good.
Yeah, you got to keep a little extra pressure on and try and make them make a mistake.
Another thing for me that I personally really don't like is this kind of ties into like the asshole kind of person, but it's a little bit different. So I'm a person who's I really do like the rules of the game, and I understand like the phases, the way the priority works in Magic, but there are some players I think who will take those kinds of things to be a little bit too seriously, and they'll do things that will slow down the game. So an example I have for this is I was playing a game with a player who was playing Cloth, Unrivaled Ancient, which is the Gruul Dragon, where when it attacks, you add a combination of mana in red and green to your mana pool, and you can only use that to cast or activate dragon spells, I believe. And every single time this guy attacked, not very many times, granted, like 2 times it happened, but there's another guy who would just being like, okay, what colors are you gonna get? And like, I was just like not about it. It was just like, I was just like, okay, bro, I get it if it's like gameplay things and like like slowing down the game, whatever. But like, I don't want people to make the actions of Magic take longer. So stuff like priority when it doesn't matter, I don't really want people to do. Like, I get it. Priority stuff is intricacy of Magic and it can be fun and interesting, but not when it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you don't have to be overly pedantic in game Magic. It's like, yeah, some stuff just doesn't matter.
Yeah, and all you're doing is wasting my time.
Yeah, don't waste people's time. It's really more valuable than you might think. I was playing a game once where I like went to combat and I had like my Shadrix deck, and I triggered my Shadrix and decided not to attack anybody, but then I just moved on to second main and like played a spell, but I didn't like specifically mention that I ended combat. And somebody was just like, "You can't do that. You're still in combat." It's like, that's implicit, okay? Just like,
I'm casting a creature. I'm not in combat here. Yeah. And they didn't even have like an interaction or anything, or they didn't have like an effect at the end of combat or anything, which would make sense. Like, you're like cast spells, like, oh, you're going to second main phase, I'm gonna do something in your combat. Like, it makes sense. But like, just to be like, I don't know, like, oh, you didn't ask me to move. I don't know. It's just a little bit takes too much time. But is there anything else you want to talk about, Eli, or is that about?
I've got something kind of on the other end of the pub stomper thing where I will only ever do the kamikaze player thing if I feel like there is a massive power imbalance and go at somebody at a total detriment to myself.
So you're saying that the kamikaze play, that is the play that is not like really aimed at making yourself win, is not something you will do unless it's like to stomp the pub stomper?
Yeah, like there's some people who might, and that's fine, like you shouldn't, it's very like basic thing to say that you shouldn't expect to win all your games and you should be fine losing. But I think, and this is maybe going into a little bit of the social contract theory and everything,
and like the theory, like the game theory of social, Magic.
But if we're playing a game of Commander and I just know that somebody has no qualms about losing the game and they don't ever care about winning, all they want to do is make me lose every game regardless of anything that's going on, that could be a little bit frustrating. And what I'll do, I might be fine with, I might not take it personally or get mad at that person, but within that game, I think there's this kind of saying on, if somebody insists on waging war, you should take away their ability to wage it.
Sure. I
might just have to try and take that person out before they, wait for their moment and,
to kamikaze you,
and stab me in the back when it's inopportune
for them.
Yeah.
If it's good for them, that's something. But if they're doing it like just like to hurt themselves and you, like for no gain, it's a little bit weird. Additionally, I feel this way a little bit similarly with group hug decks, or at least group hug decks that aren't trying to win. Because because a lot of group hug decks are like, oh, I'm group hug, but I'm actually just trying to stay alive and win at the end. Group hug decks that aren't doing that and just trying to like make everyone else have fun, you are my enemy.
That's almost like the inverse of like the kamikaze thing, because they're not trying to hurt you by taking resources away from you. They're hurting you by giving resources to your opponents.
Yeah,
and that feels just as bad, I think.
Yeah. So and similarly, not exactly the same, but like if let's say your opponents have a deal with each other, I mean, that kind of makes you both my enemies, right? Like, I have to hunt the players that have deals. Like, if you guys are going to be, like, doing something that, like, trades resources between you two, like, if players do the thing where it's like, okay, I'll let you hit me with your guy that draws a card when it hits you if you let me hit you with the guy that when it hits you I draw a card, like, I'm just leaving value on the table if I don't hunt these guys who are like trading value outside without me. Without including
totally.
Me.
I played a game once. 2 people had Ristic studies, and they were both just like,
I won't pay for you. If you won't pay for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that is tilting as hell because they could have paid for it a lot of those times.
Yeah,
it's just no.
Yeah,
you can't really do much about that.
Or stuff like if there's 2 consecrated Sphinx, right, and they both just. Because I think it's a May on Consecrated Sphinx, right?
Yeah.
So they are just like, okay, we're just going to keep drawing and give each other a million cards. Like, okay, well, okay.
Yeah, the kamikaze thing and the social contract deal, it's just like, it's hard to deal with that if somebody is totally committed to taking you out of a game. A lot of the time they can, and a lot of the time in Commander, the reasons you aren't overly aggressive is just because it will open you up to a lot more aggression from your other opponents, and it'll leave you vulnerable. But if somebody... It's sort of like in real life. If I wanted somebody dead and I did not care about going to prison, I could make them dead.
Yeah,
But we don't do that because there's a greater cost to ourselves to.
But if you run into a Commander player who doesn't care about their own life and just wants you dead, you might have to get them first.
Yeah, especially
if that makes sense.
If they've made that very clear and like they've clarified they don't care about winning, that
Yeah.
should probably do something about that.
Well, I think that's about what we have for the idea of the hunt. But now we're going to talk about Innistrad Midnight Hunt.
Should we maybe talk about some things like how to deal with some of these?
Oh, true.
Things that we might do.
I forgot about that. Sorry.
We kind of mentioned putting people on the back foot and like really making them use their resources. Is there anything else
that you
specific to
gameplay or deck building or something?
Yeah.
Well, I personally like to play a couple Silver Bullet-y type cards sometimes in my decks. Like maybe I will play Bojuka Bog. Everyone knows Bojuka Bog's a good card because you need to stop the Muldrotha deck or something, right? Mm-hmm. But additionally, cards like Torpor Orb or whatever stop like the Yarok deck or whatever. I think sometimes I find myself playing cards like Red Elemental Blast to stop the free counter spells kind of things. What do you have anything in particular that you use to?
Well, I have 2 decks. Like I talked earlier about the idea of like it's kind of like our transition. Like we're going to talk about Midnight Hunt, but I like the idea of like Cathars on Innistrad. They're monster hunters.
Thematically, especially.
So I have a Thalia Heretic Cathar deck that I built to kind of be mostly an anti kind of blue deck, but it's got like some hate bears. It's got some kind of Staxy enchantments, things to fight back against, things that are pretty common in Commander. It's also got a lot of board wipes.
Yeah.
So it's a very reactive deck.
Ways to fight back against like that kind of value engine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, Eli, you've told me before that you kind of, at some point, want to make the Bug Squasher bug deck, which is a Sultai deck.
Oh, yeah, the Sultai deck built to exterminate other Sultai decks, kind of like the like in the Terminator series, when they reprogram the Terminators.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like the vampire with a soul kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I also have my Tajik deck, which is less controlling than my Thalia deck, because I added red to it, and it's just like a very aggressive hate bear deck. Because I like the idea of hate bears being like these creatures that...
They can get in.
They fight back against like the evil magic.
Mm-hmm. So, you can really smack that extra turn player. Smack him for a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing about like blue decks or even some bug decks, especially the bug decks that are less focused on creatures. If you're dealing like with a reanimator strategy, that can be really tough to deal with because they just get out big creatures faster than you can deal with them.
But something like Tatyova or whatever, or something else, they don't always have early ways to block.
Yeah, some of these decks, they require time to do their thing, and you really need to take that time away if you can.
That's why when I built my bug deck that I just built recently, I made sure to have a whole section of cards that I consider defensive cards. So I would consider cards like Baleful Strix to be a good defensive card against that aggro opponent, or something like it comes out a bit later, but a card like Grave Titan I think I get it. It's aggressive, but it's also very defensive because it's not a creature that can get removed with one removal spell and they can get in at me. I've got 2 more blockers after that.
Yeah, definitely. That's an important thing that I think a lot of bug decks or Simic decks will do the classic commander archetype thing of just ramp, then card draw, and then do their big thing. But you really want to...
If you can have a board presence to stop people from killing you while doing that card draw, card advantage thing, that's really good, yeah.
Yeah, because they're just used to people playing commander like, classic commander where people don't really play aggro strategies.
People are used to like the kind of, maybe not solitaire, but like, ramp, card draw, value card, play creature, sits back, doesn't attack kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, and aggro can also be good, like we said, dealing with black decks, taking away their life as a resource.
Yeah. So those are some of the ways that I and you, Eli, have been kind of stopping, hunting certain decks. I wouldn't go as far to play like that, what is it? Is it Ugin's Nexus? That like...
oh, yeah, the anti-extra turn artifact.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. Or what's the other one that stops Planeswalker abilities?
The Immortal Sun?
The Immortal Sun. I wouldn't go that far to play those kinds of... I really hate extra turn, so I'll play Ugin's Nexus. That just seems like... Unless you're like trying to get the extra turn yourself from that.
Yeah, I'm generally not in favor of playing super niche, like, silver bullet cards like that. Like I was saying about my Thalia deck, I play a lot of cards that are sort of hate bear or stacks effects, but I try to keep that limited to things that come up frequently. Like, for example, I wouldn't play... There's like a 2-mana hate bear that like removes counters from a player and makes sure they can't get...
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sun...
Tillinolli's something...
It's like a 1/4?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you play cards like Authority of the Consuls that makes all the creatures enter tap, because that's going to hurt everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to play creatures. Well, most people. I suppose you could make a Planeswalker deck and have no creatures in your deck.
Yeah, or like, even if you really are afraid of graveyard decks, I feel like playing 10 pieces of graveyard hate in your deck is probably...
I tend not to play... I don't play cards like Tormod's Crypt or whatever, but I might play a Rest in Peace as like a soul, because that one's just really good.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, maybe just like like I said, when I built my new Sultai deck, I wanted to make sure to include Graveyard Hate, and I've got 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate in the deck, and that's a Bajuka Bog and a Scavenging Ooze, which also fits that category of defensive card, because it's able to get big and block, it's able to gain me life, and it's able to do Graveyard Hate when I need it to.
Yeah, if you can have your effects overlap with a couple of things
that's really
you want
nice.
to do, that's super nice. Another thing I wanted to mention with as far as like the aggro idea, that's also really feels good if you're playing against like that mono blue deck and they have to use their free counter spell on your creature to stop them from dying to combat damage. That's like premium to me.
Yeah. and then the other player goes off, but that's fine. That's okay. We'll take our losses. Someone's gonna win. Just not the free counter spell blue player owned. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, is there anything else you wanted to mention about that, Eli?
No, I think that pretty much wraps that up. So now we're going to move on. The set Innistrad Midnight Hunt just released last Friday, and we think it's a really cool set for Commander. There's a lot of neat new cards to talk about, and we don't like doing full set reviews, but we thought we'd each pick one card per color and then one multicolored card to talk about from this set.
Yeah, stuff that we either... I mean, so we don't necessarily pick like the most powerful card, because like... Obviously, the mono blue guy that gives all your spells flashback is like very powerful, but it doesn't really interest me at all, so it's not what I'm going to be talking about for my blue card.
Yeah, I don't think I need to tell people, hey, Vanquish the Horde might go in close to every white deck now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hot take to I don't say that lightly, but I mean, I think it's pretty apparent.
The White Blasphemous Act, as I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everyone's calling it that, because it's a pretty obvious comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Eli, why don't you start off with our first white card?
Yeah, starting with white. You know, I know we're biased, but I feel like as far as Commander's concerned, white got the most cool cards. Like I had a really hard time thinking of what I would pick for this, but ultimately I went with the Cathar Commando, which is a common from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. It is a 2-mana 3/1 with flash. It's a human soldier. You can pay 1 mana, sacrifice Cathar Commando, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So that's like the what's the dino that does that?
Thrashing Brontodon.
Thrashing Brontodon. There was a
new green card that does that in this new set too.
Yeah, there was the old what's the classic one? The green
white
one.
Yes, Exalted. Oh god. The name
escapes me right now.
It'll be in the video.
That used to be like a classic commander card, and it's kind of gone to the wayside. But having Flash on that, I mean, Brontodon's nice because it's a 3-mana 3/4. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Won't knock that. But this having Flash, I think is really cool.
It's a really big deal. I've seen this card compared to Reclamation Sage because I know white players, or even not white players, have been asking for a sort of white Reclamation Sage. And while this is not a white Reclamation Sage because you have to sacrifice it to kill the thing, it does kind of fit that purpose though. And I think the Flash people, there's a green card in the set that's also a 2-mana 2/2, and it has the same ability to sacrifice it and destroy an artifact or enchantment. But it's also a werewolf, so it flips into a 3-mana 3/3.
It flips into a werewolf that's kind of like a Trigon Predator. When it attacks, it destroys an artifact or enchantment.
And people are saying like, oh my god, I've heard people say like, oh my god, green power creeping white again, but I think this is just better. Flash is a big deal.
Yeah, and like you were saying about comparing it to Reclamation Sage, sure, it doesn't like do the thing and then stick around necessarily, but I don't necessarily have to have a thing to destroy the turn I play this. Like, I could flash this in on somebody's end step, like turn 2, swing in for 3 a couple times. Like, you're probably going to have somebody you can attack.
Early in the game, at least.
And then just be able to, like, hold up 1 mana, which is not a lot to ask.
Yeah, versus a Reclamation Sage, you can't do it at instant speed, and, if you get this in early, later on in the game, it only will cost you the 1 mana as opposed to the 3 from the Reclamation Sage, right?
And we got to apply the Sun Titan test. Yep, passes that.
Passes the Sun Titan test. Nice.
We're good. And I just wanted to, related to the idea of the hunt, I wanted to read out the flavor text from this one because I think it's really cool. It says, "Honorable tactics are for honorable foes. These werewolves are preying on innocent travelers. I'll stab them in the back while they sleep if I have to." So that's how I feel pretty much about like pub stompers and bug players.
Yeah,
they're not honorable foes.
All means necessary to take them out.
Yep, take them down.
And speaking of the Sun Titan test, the card that I want to talk about is a mythic from this set, Sigardian Savior, which is 5 mana for a 3/3 flying angel. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, return up to 2 target creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Cathar Commando also passes the Sigardian Savior test. Yeah. But, I don't know, I just think this is a really cool card. One thing I want to... it's Sun Titan it is not. It takes a lot to get to Sun Titan. And it only happens when you cast it, so you can't do things like reanimate it yourself and then get more things back. But... getting 2 things back is actually kind of a big deal. And I want to say that I think white, as a color, has by far the best 1-drop creatures in the format, and some of the best 2-drop creatures in the format. Like, Eli, I think you and I were talking about it earlier, and trying to think of good 1-drop creatures in all the colors. For red, I've got, like, Goblin Welder. For black, I've got, like, jack shit. Green has Mana Dorks and Uvenwald Tracker. Blue has, like, nothing. And then white has, like, 10 great creatures, Esper Sentinel, help me out here, Eli. Soul Sisters, I never remember the names of cards. Sarah Ascendant,
Weather
Wayfarer, Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes, tons of great 1-drop creatures.
I have a whole package in my mono white deck built around things like Ranger of Eos, Ranger Captain of Eos, and just getting 1-drops.
So I love Sigardian Savior. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, myself included, might be kind of hung up on the only if you cast it part of that. But really, maybe we should just be resigned to being fine with stuff like that, because it is still good. Like, if you play that and get back 2 2-drops, you're effectively getting a 3/3 for 1 mana off of that. Like, the total mana value you're getting from that.
Yeah, and you drew the 2 2-drops you played and played them.
Yeah, and it's really... And you could maybe do stuff like bounce it back to your hand and recast it, and, like, there's things you can do. Or if you're getting bounced by, like, a blue player, you can keep getting value from it. Yeah,
I really like Sigardian Savior. It's a really cool card. Mm-hmm. Do you want to move on to Eli telling us your favorite blue card from the set?
Yeah, now for blue. So and again, I'm going to mention that my bias came up a little bit here. I didn't think there were too many blue cards I found really interesting. But I was talking to a friend of mine and trying to ask him if there's a blue card he's excited for. And he has a zombie deck, and he said, I kind of like that Larder Zombie. And I was like, Larder Zombie? What is that? It's a 1-mana 1/3 zombie with Defender. And you tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Look at the top card of your library. You may put in your graveyard. So you surveil 1. and that doesn't seem that great, and it's not amazing. But I was like, well, I have that Arcades deck, I have that wall deck, so I could see maybe playing that in there because I already am playing just some 1-mana, like 0/3s or like 3 toughness things, because they're effectively like 1-mana 3/3s in that deck that draw you a card, so they kind of are okay. And this might actually hedge out some of those, because this kind of like the turn you play it, you could activate that ability if you have like a couple blockers up, or even my commander has vigilance, so just being able to like surveil before playing another wall.
Yeah, like on the end step or something.
Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. Like, also, I have some kind of graveyard synergy in that deck with like Blinking Eternal Witness or Mnemonic Wall, so it could be okay.
And I'm not saying that you should put it in the deck, but let's say you put Sigardian Savior in your Walls deck, you can get 2 1-drop Walls and draw 2 cards.
There we go. Yeah,
there's the tying in. No, it's a cool card though. Yeah, you don't really need to do a lot to be a good defender in an Arcades deck.
Yeah, like you were saying about not very many good 1-drops, and we like to play creatures a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I've got white in that deck, but there's only so many good white walls, and I want to play more 1-drops if I can.
Yep. My blue card I want to talk about is Triskaidekaphile. This is a 2-mana 1/3. It says you have no maximum hand size, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. And it's got an activated ability for 4 mana, 3 and a blue, draw a card. So I just want to talk about that. I really like this. I don't like this card for the win the game effect. What I like this card for is I really like cards that have that 4 mana draw a card effects, the Azure Mages of the world. Well, I don't like Azure Mage, but like this type of card, like River Hoopu Azure Mage.
Yes, strictly better Azure Mages.
Yeah, Spectral Sailor, Gretchen, Witch Widow, and of course Thrasios. Mm-hmm. They're all really cool effects, and I kind of like... I recently built a deck that has that as kind of a sub-theme. I only play like the really good ones, like Spectral Sailor, this Triskaidekaphile, and like Gretchen and stuff like that. But, I think the fact that this gives you the no maximum hand size is actually pretty powerful for this effect. And if you have effects that let you untap your lands in every turn or something like that, then just having these ways to kind of draw cards staple onto creatures is really good. Originally, when I built the deck, I built it with a little bit of a discard. Everyone discards their hand sub-theme, and if you have creatures that have card draw as an activated ability, that's kind of a way you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, and these cards are really cool, especially on blue effects, because they let you hold up your interaction, and if you don't end up playing it, you can just be like, oh, I draw a card instead. Mm-hmm. So mana sinks are really nice for that sort of thing.
So if you ever try building River Hoopu Hydra Tribal, if you want, you can get a Hydra deck, I guess, but don't do that. That's all I have to say about this Triskaidekaphile. You want to talk about the next one, Eli?
Yeah, moving on to black cards. I put this uncommon called Dreadhound. It's a 6-mana 6/6 demon dog. When it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, and whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from a library, each opponent loses 1 life. So I think, first of all, 6-mana 6/6 feels really clean. Milling 3 cards is kind of nice. I think it can almost not have that and it'd still be pretty good, but incidentally milling yourself, strong in a black deck. I like these kind of effects as a sort of board wipe deterrent, and like Zulaport Cutthroat, Blood Artist, they kind of do that, but they also they don't deal a ton of damage because they don't count, like Blood Artist might count every creature dying, but you only point 1 damage per death.
Yeah, this one is 1 for each opponent, right?
Yeah, so you could have a really, like, say there's a total of 10 or like 20 creatures on the board between all players. If somebody board wipes you and you have Blood Artist, you can point maybe a maximum of 20 damage at 1 person. But if somebody board wipes your big board and you have Dreadhound out, each opponent's going to lose a ton of life.
Yeah.
So just the total amount of life loss happening from that, not even counting the fact that it counts when people mill creatures, I think that's just a lot of life loss, and it's really good.
Yeah, the effect where when they milk things, it's kind of shades of Sir Conrad a little bit. Granted, Sir Conrad is a lot better because it lets you discard things. But I've played Anji Falconwrath deck, and Sir Conrad is a spell that is even better when you don't have to cast it. When you get to reanimate it for 1 mana and then go off. Same with Dreadhound. I know it's a 6-mana 6/6, but if you're really trying to abuse it, you can get it into play for 1 or 2 mana from a reanimate effect.
Yeah, it seems super solid, and I think it's going to be a really good curve topper for like an aggressive creature-based black deck.
Sure, that seems kind of cool. So next, my black card I want to talk about is the Meat Hook Massacre. I just want to say, this card is terrifying. A little bit more gory than I would expect for a Magic card, honestly. But it's a mythic from the set, legendary enchantment for black X, and it says when it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. So if you play it for X equals 4, total 6 mana, all creatures get -4/-4. But it's an enchantment, so it sticks around, and it says whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain a life. So it's a little bit like that last card you mentioned, Eli, where it's a little bit like it's a board wipe deterrent later on, but it's also a board wipe itself that will gain you some life and make your opponents lose some life. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really cool card.
Yeah, and I really like that. If you wanted to, you could just play this for 2 mana before playing your own, like a different board wipe.
Yeah, you don't have to give creatures -X. You could just play this as a 2 mana enchantment.
Yeah, it fills your curve. Like, you just play that on turn 2 if you really don't have anything else. Like, if you don't think you're going to need it later.
You know, thinking of it like that 2 mana enchantment, it could kind of be like a Zulaport Cutthroat, except not susceptible to creature removal and board wipes. Right? Because, I mean, your opponents only lose life when your creatures die, but, I mean, it fits that theme, at least, if you're playing, like, Black Aristocrats tokens or something.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like a very versatile card.
Especially when you double up on the effects, like you have that Dreadhound and a Zulaport Cutthroat, and then you cast Meat Hook Massacre to kill everything. Like, you can just be killing everyone.
Nice. All right, now next up we have Red. And I picked, this is a card, like, I think we mentioned when Plarg came out, how I really wanted a 2 mana red Rummager for the longest time. And along those lines, for a long time, I've really wanted a red Archaeomancer type of effect. And they've come really close, especially Modern Horizons 2 had the one
with Madness?
Was it Revolutionist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Madness 6 mana Archaeomancer, but you could mana sit for 4, and then you get to draw a card with, because you're rummaging it.
Yep.
But now we finally got the Ardent Elementalist. It is a 4 mana 2/1 human shaman. When it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So like I was saying, I would have settled for, the exact equivalent to Archaeomancer, which would be 2 red and be a 1/2. And that'd be fine. But this is even better because it's only 1 red pip and it's a 2/1, so it's skull clampable. So I'm going to put this in my my more competitive deck, my Gerard deck, which has like some ways to abuse ETBs and like cheat in creatures and use it to get back things like Jessica's Will or like Wheels.
So oh my god! So you're gonna pay 1 mana to sneak attack this into play, get back a Jessica's Will, skull clamp it, play Jessica's Will. That sounds ridiculous.
Or maybe play in my Feather deck too and get back some blink spell or removal spell.
That got in the graveyard because someone interacted with it.
Yeah, this effect is really strong. Anyone like Archaeomancer might not seem like a really crazy card, but it's like I was talking about Mnemonic Wall earlier. You can get into some like really crazy loops with cards like this.
Yeah, effects like what is it? The Sublime Epiphany, which lets you choose a bunch of modes. Counter spell, bounce a thing, create a copy of a creature you control, draw a card, counter an activate ability. If you have an effect like Ardent Elementalist or Archaeomancer in play, it just lets you make a copy of that and then get the spell back to your hand.
Yeah, like the in my Arcades deck, Spencer, it's got that kind of loop with a Mnemonic Wall or Eternal Witness and Eerie Interlude, where it lets you like blink your
a bunch of
board
things
repeatedly. I could do this in like my Feather deck with Eerie Interlude and like not even have Feather in play.
Yeah.
And still be able to blink my board. Like if I had like a Dockside Extortionist, then I could do that every
turn. And you get, that seems ridiculous. So I love it a lot.
Really strong card.
And
again, it's a common.
Yeah. Lots of really good commons and uncommons they've been putting out in white and red especially. Next card is Lunar Frenzy, which I think is not nearly as powerful as that Elementalist you were saying, but it is a cool card and I like it a lot. It's red and X for an uncommon instant, and it says target creature you control gets +X/+O and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. So this is very not a card you really expect to play. Combat tricks aren't very good in Commander in general, but I think this card's pretty elegantly designed actually, because it's kind of like a modal card, because for just a single red with paying 0 as your X thing, it's first strike and trample on a 1 mana spell. And then for every mana you put into it, it gives it that much more power. So I think it's kind of interesting as a modal spell, but I really like the idea of just being able to use this in some sort of big creature deck as a way to give trample that's more flexible than the more traditional instants that give trample. Usually they're just like +3/+0 +3/+1 and trample or whatever. Whereas this gives you first strike, and you can even just play it for 1 or up to like 10 mana or something. Be like kind of a mini Kessig Wolf run that also gives like first strike.
Yeah, and normally I would be in that camp of I don't like pump spells in Commander. I don't think they're very good. But this one, the first strike and trample, and like you're saying how versatile that is, you can use this in some ways, like in going in for the attack and somebody say like double, like you have like your gear ed, it's a 2/5. I block with a 2/2 and a 3/3, and then you Lunar Frenzy for X = 3, and all of a sudden it's a 5/5 with first strike. You take out 2 creatures, so it's not just like it's not a one-off, it's not a 1-for-1 or a 1-for-0. It's, you could use this to make it like
if kind of a removal spell.
Yeah, if somebody's like, or if you have like a 10/10, somebody's like trying to like quadruple block it to take it down, you play this out. Not only are you taking out all their creatures without losing yours, but you're also getting all the damage through.
Yeah, and another thing that happens in Commander a lot is, at least I find it happening a lot, is people will have like a 2/4 or something, right? And then you have like a 3/3, and that you like they can just block you for free. Well, if they know you play Lunar Frenzy, and you can kind of they might be more hesitant to block it, or even if they do block it, you might be able to pay 2 mana and get through, or even like play 6 mana and get some damage in. It's a cool card, and it pairs even better if you have creatures with Death Touch, because just attacking with like a 1/1 Death Touch creature, like even like a I don't know what I was gonna say the commander that makes Death Touch dudes, but that's not in red. But 1/1 Death Touch creature attacking, like they just can't like prevent the damage from going through. If you have like 6 mana, you can always get that damage in and kill things.
Death Touch, First Strike, and Trample, probably the one of the best combinations of keywords
for combat for sure.
Yeah. Okay, up next
we got green.
We got the green cards. So for my green card, I put Dryad's Revival. It is a 3-mana sorcery. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand, and has flashback for 4 and a green. So I'm not in the camp of like
Regrowth.
Regrowth is better than Eternal Witness. I don't think that's the case, but Regrowth is still very good, and double Regrowth is pretty simple and it's not very efficient. But I think that's pretty useful.
Especially if you can get it in your graveyard for free without casting it. So, like, if it gets milled or something, it's like an extra spell in your hand. Granted, not a very good one, but still a thing.
Yeah, that's another thing I love in my my Gerard deck is I have a couple of flashback cards, and getting milled, like if somebody mills you, that's perfect, but that's not a very common thing to happen. But if you have something like Altar of Dementia, and you mill yourself, then all of a sudden you're not just getting like creatures in there to reanimate or spells to recur. You get a flashback card, and it's like you just drew that card.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit comparable to the new Timeless Witness card, because in the way that Timeless Witness is 4 mana and then 7 mana for the rebuys, and obviously creatures are going to stapled effects are going to be better than sorceries, but this is 3 mana and 5 mana for the flashback. So it is you're saving some money, or saving some mana, I suppose, on that.
Yeah, and this mostly stood out to me because I have a Gruul Spellslinger deck, and I intentionally don't run like too many creatures in that deck, and I'm not really like playing any kind of creature synergy. So, and that deck just makes a lot of mana too, and it gets a lot of its card advantage through graveyard synergies. So something like this is really appealing to me. Yeah,
I can imagine in that deck you go Mana Geyser, play Dryad's Revival, get Mana Geyser back, play Mana Geyser, play Dryad's Revival, get Mana Geyser back again, and then, just as a way to make a lot of mana.
Yeah.
Seems good. Especially because in that deck you do a lot of looting. Mm-hmm. Or at least a little bit of looting.
Yeah, the looting...
Or rummaging, I suppose.
Looting or rummaging that away, it's pretty much extra card advantage.
Yeah. Okay, so my green card is Tovolar's Huntmaster. A card that was originally, I think... mistranslated originally, and people were thinking it was better Grave Titan.
Strictly better Grave Titan.
But it is not that. So it is a 6 mana 6/6 in green. It's a rare. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, you make 2 green wolf creature tokens. Not when it attacks, only when it enters. But it also has Daybound, so that means when it becomes night, it flips into a 7/7 that makes 2 green wolf creature tokens when it attacks. Or enters the battlefield, I suppose. And then it also has the ability, 4 mana... Another target wolf or werewolf you control fights target creature you don't control. I'm not thinking about this in the sense of any wolf or werewolf deck. I'm just, that value, I guess you can make your 2/2 wolves fight something.
Yeah, throw away a 2/2 and kill somebody else's 2/2 or their 4/2 or whatever.
But, I mean, I've heard people talk about how Grave Titan is not good anymore these days, but I think Grave Titan holds up just fine. I just picked up a copy because I've been wanting to play it for years, and, Grave Titan at home, Tovalar's Huntmaster, it's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's the thing about Grave Titan is 6 mana for 10.
10/10.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
And I was talking earlier about how this is kind of a defensive card and an aggressive card at the same time, which I like a lot. And the back half, one of the problems with the daybound, nightbound stuff is that sometimes it's really hard to have it be nightbound on your turn because you have to skip your turn to make it nightbound, then someone will flip it back over. But at least if it's nightbound on your opponent's turn, this does have an ability you can use on their turn if you find yourself maybe playing a werewolf deck or something, or just having interaction.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've got the multicolored cards to talk about. Eli, why don't you give us your multicolored card?
So I had to pick a Boros card. It is the Brutal Cathar. He's a 3-mana 2/2 human soldier werewolf. When this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Brutal Cathar, exile target creature an opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield, and it has Daybound, so if a player casts no spells during their turn, it becomes night next turn. And on the other side, it is the Moonrage Brute. It's a 3/3 first strike with Ward, pay 3 life, so if somebody targets that with a spell, they have to pay an additional 3 life to cast that.
Yep, or it's countered.
And then it has Nightbound. If a player casts at least 2 spells during their own turn, it becomes day next turn, at which point it flips back into the Brutal Cathar and exiles another thing. So this effect, it's usually not super amazing in Commander. I mean, you can usually just kind of you get one what's the
Banisher Priest, right?
Banisher Priest effect.
That's literally this, except this is better, right?
Yeah, you might see Fiend Hunter because you can abuse the way it's worded. You can actually permanently exile something, or you can do some combo stuff. But the ability to maybe do this multiple times, I think, gives some extra value to this, and it's also just becomes a more aggressive body when it flips over.
Yeah, and players will often just command zone their commanders if you hit their commanders with this. It happens a lot.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. If they don't have removal or they don't feel like they can take it out in combat or something or force a block, you're right, they'll just command zone it because they don't know when it's going to leave the battlefield. And
also, I mentioned with Tovalar's Huntmaster that oftentimes you can't really get the way that you can make it night yourself is by not casting spells. So it requires you to not you don't have access to the back half on your turn a lot of the time. But this is a card where it doesn't really matter that much if you don't have access to the back half on your turn, because you want to flip back over and over and over and over again.
Right, it rewards you for it becoming the smaller creature, and usually werewolves, might feel bad because somebody could pretty easily turn it back to day.
But when it goes back to day, that's better than it staying as the back half.
Yeah, because 3/3 first strike is nice, but that's not really
why you're playing it.
I don't think.
Yeah, you're playing it for the ability to exile creature. Also, this card is a bomb and limited. Oh my god, it destroyed me.
Yeah, and I also had to put this because I love the aesthetic of the Cathars on Innistrad, and this guy is just totally, he's rocking that, hardcore.
Yeah.
He's got the stakes, he's got the hand crossbow.
He's got the hat.
Yeah, he's got the cool hat.
It's awesome.
What do you got, Spencer?
Alright, I've got this card, Siphon Insight. It's blue and a black for an instant, and it says, look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, and put the other on the bottom of the library. You may look at and play the exiled card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana or mana any color to cast a spell. And it has flashback for 3 mana. So this is kind of like a mini Gonti trigger for 2 cards instead of 4, but I believe Gonti doesn't let you play lands.
He does not, so that's really cool. I played against this in Limited, and my opponent just got land drops off of it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good for 2 mana. Get your 3rd land
if you need to. And this also has flashback for 3, which is really cool. I just think this card is going to be a lot of fun to play. I really like when they print these sort of effects at 2 mana. So a card like Explosive Iteration that just came out in Modern Horizons 2, or Expressive Iteration, I believe, as a way to kind of sculpt something and have a little bit more value as opposed to just a cantrip. I don't really like the cantrips. The Expressive Iteration lets you get access to 2 cards. This lets you get access to 2 cards if you play it with flashback eventually. But also, just when you need it, it can be a big game-winning bomb or a board wipe if you can get lucky and hit something good. or just be your land drop. So I think this card's just really cool. I love it a lot.
Very cool.
I'm excited to play it, yeah. So what?
So any final thoughts on Innistrad Midnight Hunt?
Well, overall, I mean, I think I just really like the I think it's really cool thematically as a set. Everyone loves Innistrad, I would say, or at least it's a fan favorite for a long time, especially the first set back in 2014, 13, something like that.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I've always been a big fan of like vampire stories, and actually this was one of the first sets that came out when I was starting Magic. I started around the time of original Zendikar.
Yep, and I started a couple years after that.
So I think this original Innistrad came out a couple years after I started playing Magic.
Yep.
And I was in high school, and funny enough, I had actually I used to act in plays, and I had just started the Dracula play at my high school, and then Innistrad was coming out.
And you're like, oh, cool.
So that was pretty cool, and I was really, really hyped up for Innistrad, and I loved the idea and the story of like the humans trying to survive against all the monsters, and it just really resonated. I love the aesthetic, the gothic horror kind of thing. I'm really excited for the Crimson Vow set coming in November.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, while werewolves are cool, I think you and I, Eli, like vampires a bit more than werewolves, thematically at least.
Yeah, I think so. I think they feel like a better villain to me.
Yeah.
Because werewolves are usually just, aside from like, I know they kind of have some agency like when they transform in Innistrad, but they're more...
they feel more like monsters, right?
They're more brutish. They're not like...
they feel a little bit more mindless.
Yeah.
Whereas vampires feel elegant and like plotting and kind of and vicious.
Yeah, they're cruel, but in a very methodical and intelligent way.
Yeah, and like, oh man, I think back to cards like Falconwrath Aristocrat and stuff, and Falconwrath Noble, and those cards just look really cool aesthetically. I know, Eli, they you know, you're a big fan of the card Thalia, and Thalia is she's here as far as I'm aware. I hope, but they did what's that card's name? The 1-drop white creature from that gets counters whenever you play humans from original Innistrad.
Oh, Champion of the Parish?
They did Champion of the Parish dirty.
Yeah, he's Champion of the Parish now.
He died.
It's for zombies.
He died. So what are you going to do, Eli, if they kill Thalia and make her a black creature?
I mean, the fact that like I'm looking through the cards and I don't think she's hardly mentioned at all. Maybe she has some flavor text in.
Do you think she's going to show up in the next set?
I sure hope so. I mean, there's at least a couple flavor texts and an artwork of Odric in this set, and I like Odric too. So I would hope that he would show up in the Crimson Vow as well as Thalia. But yeah, she better show up because she's probably like the most badass person on all of Innistrad.
Yeah,
from a lore perspective.
Yeah, so excited to see Odric. I think he's got potential to be a pretty cool white card. I hope Sorin comes back. He's not dead, right?
Nope.
He's gonna. Oh yeah, he's got some arts with him in it, like Fateful Absence. That's Sorin.
Yeah, he's been in the story so far. I've been reading the weekly Magic stories that they've been doing for Midnight Hunt. They're pretty okay so far.
So I'm excited to see Sorin come back with a Planeswalker. Maybe he can. Maybe I really liked what they did with Valky. How he was a creature on the front half and a Planeswalker on the back half. If they did that with Sorin, that would make me I'd love it. But
yeah,
I think
we'll see.
I don't have anything else to say about Midnight Hunt for now. What about you, Eli?
Yeah, that's. I just think it was a really good set, and it was nice to see. Like we mentioned, a few of these cards were commons or uncommons, and that's one thing that's been kind of lacking, and it's been a pretty valid criticism of white cards and red cards. Maybe that some of their good EDH effects, while they might exist, they were relegated to rares, mythic rares, kind of expensive cards or older cards, and seeing things like Cathar Commando. Or even there's another card here that we think is pretty good, like bread and butter, Search Party Captain, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like when you're, I understand. There's very good criticism. Like I can't afford. I don't have a land tax personally because I don't want to buy a land tax. But one of the best white cards in Commander for sure. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to start getting. I mean, we've been getting them for a while now, but I really like some of these really good commons and uncommons that we've been getting.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff that we didn't mention, but a lot of solid playables and role fillers too, like your real bread and butter,
Yeah,
your
like-
cultivate kind of cards.
Like that guy that gets the land when he enters the battlefield and he flips into a 3/3 lifelink.
Yeah,
Whatever that card's called.
really good
I'll
stuff.
put him on the screen. But other than that, I think we want to talk about, we hit our 100 subscribers on YouTube milestone.
Yeah, we hit that last week, and that's a big thing. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening. Anyone who enjoys the show, people who leave comments, that means a lot.
Yeah, and we've got a not necessarily related to that, but we've got a video essay kind of video in the works. Just to let you guys know about that. That's coming at some point.
Yeah, we're working on some new forms of content, and we're going to keep the tier list coming out. We're going to keep trying to have at least 2 episodes a month of the podcast, and
I think Eli, you and I had talked about maybe trying to do some sort of more edited, like an edited reaction style content to like maybe some other content creators or something to give our opinions on some things people say, or maybe gameplay, maybe like Command Zone, Game Nights kind of stuff. I don't know about that, but maybe. Mm-hmm. We're trying to keep the ideas flowing, think of new things to do, maybe skits. I don't know exactly what to do, but there's always more work to do. Mm-hmm. But I think that's about all we have to talk about, right, Eli?
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Follow us on Twitter at EDHTakes. We might have hit 100, but we could still stand to hit more. So hit subscribe if you're not already. That'd be much appreciated. Leave a comment. Let us know the things that you feel like you need to hunt down in a game of Commander. And before closing and before going, I wanted to read a flavor text of a card that I thought was always really cool. It's this old card from Homeland, so probably most people wouldn't know of it. It's her name is Rashka the Slayer, and there's a quote from Baron Sengir. It says, "Rarely be the prey so haughty as to hunt the hunter." So pretty much that I take that to mean like there's a lot of people playing like mono white or like Boros or something. Think, man, I'm just like I am the natural prey of this environment.
Sure, but a lot of people beat on Boros players and stuff.
Yeah, but you can don't be so resigned to be the prey and be the predator. All right, you can take back the agency and you can make some better play decisions or put some cards in your deck and really give people 1/4.
Yeah, and Rashka in this art, it's very clear that she is, Baron Sengir sees her as prey, but she's fighting back, and she's or maybe even it's not Baron Sengir, maybe she's fighting someone else, but I'm not sure the lore. But you understand what I'm saying.
It's the vampire hunt. Humans are the prey of the vampire. Like, the Sultai players or like the Simic players might look down on the white players or the Boros players and think, oh, they're easy pickings.
But it's not common that the white player, is so haughty as to hunt the hunter.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
try to be that.
Yeah, be that kind of person. Be the hunter.
Yep, and I also want to say, if you want to see us hunt down other content creators, the bigger we get, the more subscribers we get, the more maybe other people that we fuck with will lend us an eye.
I'm calling you out, Josh Lee Kwai.
No, but all right, that's about all we got, though. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.